God is not withholding your growth. Your habits are. You pray, but feel dry. You read, but nothing changes. You worship, but still feel stuck. That does not mean you are failing or faithless. It means something subtle is blocking the flow. Spiritual growth is not only about what you start doing, but what you stop feeding. Here are 5 habits that quietly shut the door. 1. You stay busy, not devoted. You can look spiritually alive while your soul is starving. Your calendar is full, your phone is loud, your mind is always solving something, and you call that productivity. But when you finally sit down with God, you realize you cannot stay focused for even a minute. You rush prayer like a task. You skim scripture like headlines. You serve, but you do not linger. Here is the reframe. Busyness is not always weakness. Sometimes it is a way you learn to survive. But survival mode cannot produce intimacy. Devotion is not more activity for God. Devotion is presence with God. The Spirit often grows you in the hidden places, not the crowded ones. If the enemy cannot make you sin, he will make you hurry, because a hurried heart cannot hear. Slow down long enough to be transformed, not just informed. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 4:6-10. 2. You keep feeding the same old thoughts. Spiritual growth slows down when your mind keeps rehearsing yesterday. You say you want change, but you keep replaying the same fears, the same comparisons, the same inner accusations. You wake up and immediately feed your soul with worry. You scroll until you feel smaller. You remember old failures until they start to sound like prophecy. And then you wonder why faith feels weak. Here is the reframe. A thought is not a truth just because it is loud. Many of your thoughts are simply unhealed places asking for light, but what you repeatedly feed becomes what you eventually follow. God renews you from the inside out, and the battlefield is often your attention. When you keep agreeing with the old narrative, you block the new one God is writing. You do not have to control every thought. You only have to choose what you will dwell on. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. 3. You avoid conviction by avoiding stillness. Some of the deepest growth you need is waiting on the other side of silence. But stillness feels dangerous because it removes distractions, and distractions have been your anesthesia. When life gets quiet, you feel the weight of what you have been ignoring. So you keep noise on, you keep podcasts running, you keep conversations going, you keep moving, because if you stop, God might speak. Here is the reframe. Conviction is not condemnation. Conviction is love with direction. It is the Spirit pointing to what can be healed, not proving that you are hopeless. But you cannot receive that gentle correction while you are constantly escaping. God does not demand stillness to punish you. He invites stillness to restore you. Because when you finally sit with Him, the mask falls, the heart opens, and transformation begins. Stillness is not empty time. It is surrendered space. In quietness and trust is your strength. Isaiah 3:15. 4. You compromise in small, private ways. Most spiritual drift does not begin with a dramatic collapse. It begins with tiny permissions you give yourself in secret, a small lie to protect your image, a private habit you keep excusing, a relationship boundary you keep bending, a little bitterness you keep rehearsing. You tell yourself it is not a big deal because no one sees it, but your soul sees it. And over time, what you tolerate quietly becomes what you carry heavily. Here is the reframe. You are not being targeted because you are weak. You are being tested because you are called. The enemy rarely needs to destroy you publicly if he can dull you privately. Compromise does not always ruin your life overnight. It just slowly reduces your hunger for God. Holiness is not perfection. Holiness is alignment. It is choosing integrity when it costs you comfort. Small obediences protect big destinies. Whoever is faithful in little is faithful also in much. Luke 16:10. 5. You refuse to forgive because it feels like losing. Some habits block growth not because they look sinful, but because they feel justified. You were hurt, betrayed, dismissed, and forgiveness feels like saying it was acceptable. So you hold the debt. You replay the story. You stay guarded. You call it wisdom, but inside, Your heart stays tense, and your prayers feel heavy. Here is the reframe. Forgiveness is not approval, it is release. It is you refusing to stay chained to what wounded you. Unforgiveness keeps the other person in your mind, but it also keeps you in the same emotional room where the pain began. God does not ask you to forgive to erase justice. He asks you to forgive so your spirit can breathe again. Because growth requires a heart that is free. Forgive as the Lord forgave you, Colossians 3:13. When you look at these 5 habits together, a single pattern appears. You are not blocked because God is distant. You are blocked because your heart is divided. Busyness replaces devotion. Old thoughts replace truth. Noise replaces conviction. Compromise replaces integrity. And unforgiveness replaces freedom. So here is the question. Do you want comfort more than transformation? Because the cost of staying the same is slow spiritual numbness. But the way forward is real, and it begins with surrender. Spiritual growth was never meant to be forced. It is formed when you make room for God to do what only He can do. You are not falling behind. You are being invited back to alignment. Release the hurry, renew your mind, embrace stillness, choose integrity, and let forgiveness loosen what has been gripping you. If this speaks to you, whisper a simple prayer today. Lord, I surrender. And remember, He who began a good work in you will carry it on. Philippians 1:6.